As we sort of hop on the air here, live here on YouTube and on Spotify here for the Four Protocols podcast, episode 125. Um, there's a game that, supposedly no one's talking about, according to some people, being South Carolina and Vanderbilt. We'll talk about it. That's the first game we're previewing today. So that will be discussed here on the show today for Tuesday, September 9th, 2025, high atop a soaked and cool Jacksonville, Florida. Feels a bit like fall out there. Um, but yeah, a lot of games to discuss. And this past weekend, I know we did not do a traditional reaction to week 3 or week 2. I was going to, but some stuff kind of happened where I wasn't able to do it. But we'll kind of breeze through the games that were, excuse me, pretty meaningful to talk about. Then we'll get into the previews and we'll have the Tuesday poll to discuss as well, and reaction to the Bucs win, the Buccaneers win over the Falcons. So we'll kind of discuss all that. But if you're new here, welcome to the show. We do this show twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays around this time in the afternoon. We cover college football, Marvel, Star Wars news when there's things to talk about with that. And also, as a Buccaneers fan, Tampa Bay, we do talk about them and sort of go through their games throughout the season. So that's sort of right down the show. Now, a little housekeeping, note here. This will be a normal week this week, so we'll have normal shows, obviously, today and Thursday. Next week's going to be a little bit different again, so the schedule's going to be sort of odd. We will not have a traditional show on Tuesday. We'll have to probably do it Tuesday night. I would have done it Monday night, but the Bucs play Monday Night Football next week, so we'll do the show Tuesday night. I guess we'll be competing with Josh Pitt, I guess, on Tuesday. But because of the way the schedule's like, the Tuesday show is going to be an evening again. I know it's not ideal, but kind of is what it is. We should be back to normal on Thursday. But yeah, no show during the day Tuesday. We'll have to do it in the evening Tuesday, and we should be ready to go. So it should be normal after that, hopefully for a little bit. And then I think it's going to get weird again a little bit, but it's okay. We'll kind of get through it. But yeah, that's the only major change in next week. So I'll remind you guys on the Thursday show that next Tuesday, no show during the day. It'll have to be the evening instead of during the day. So, and then on Thursday, we should be doing it as normal. So should be okay there. But make sure to subscribe to the channel. Of course, everyone's coming in because of college ball and the NFL. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's free. Nothing happens. I don't, knock on your door or force you guys to sign anything and whatnot. Same as Spotify as well. Make sure you subscribe over there and follow, and then make sure to follow me on Twitter, X, over there as well. Another thing too to mention, I know the show last Thursday got kind of weird because something happened in the middle. The Spotify version just doesn't exist. We tried to do both, split the show up in 2 parts, but it just wasn't going to work. So that show, much like another one, I think recently, we just don't exist on Spotify. It is on YouTube. So apologies for that, but things happen. And when I was recording it, I forgot to hit the pause button instead of the ending the recording for Spotify. So it is what it is. But let's get into the show here. Again, we have we'll do our reaction to week 2 first, and then we will let me pause that real quick. My stream that is going live here on the YouTube channel. But so we'll cover the games that happened this weekend, and then we will move on to predicting week 3. So, and then we'll of course do the Bucs reaction, the Tuesday poll and whatnot. So should be okay. Oklahoma beats Michigan this past Saturday, 24-13. Not an aesthetically appealing game for someone who likes to have, watch high-flying offenses. This is not for you. And I think we sort of knew that going into it. I think the key to this game when we were talking about it was the coaching advantage, particularly on the offense or the defense for, I guess, offense a little bit. But we'll discuss that in a second. But the defense of Oklahoma, with Brent Venables being the chief engineer for that now, since he, has badge calling the plays. That chess match of him and Chip Lindsey and the offensive folks over at Michigan. It was pretty clear who was the better coaching staff. It was Oklahoma defensively over the Michigan offense. Bryce Underwood, and we'll discuss them a little bit later, but he was, definitely not totally confused, I guess, but there's definitely some moments where he looked like a freshman. But Oklahoma, just broadly, right, just kind of dissect the game here a little bit from their standpoint. Defense, great. I mean, you did what you're supposed to do. With that pedigree of Rick Venables going against a offense that has a true freshman quarterback and receivers that are certainly the worst receiving core you'll probably face all year, at least from a P4 or just power 2 opponent. Defensively, thought you guys really flexed your muscles there. Only allowed maybe, I think, 2 or 3 big plays from Michigan. But offensively, sweet and sour is the way to describe it. The passing game didn't really get that much rhythm, but the run game was certainly there. Now, it's not necessarily a good thing that John Mateer was your leading rusher, despite the fact you got Jay Knott from California in the transfer portal back in the spring, or I believe it was it spring or winter, I don't remember. But I guess for that game, it's reasonable. Sort of like, ironic, your former quarterback Jackson Arnold, when Auburn went to Baylor, he was the leading rusher for the team, and it worked out just fine. So him being the leading rusher, it's not a concern. It's just an observation. It's not something I'm expecting them to do every single game. But certainly, hey, they showed on offense they can win different ways, right? They threw the ball definitely more last week against their FCS team, and this week against Michigan, they ran the ball effectively with their quarterback. So that was nice to see. But overall, from the Oklahoma standpoint, again, the offense, sweet and sour, a lot of things that you wish that you could have done a whole lot better. But you got the run game going for your quarterback. Ben Arbuckle is definitely being worth every single penny that you're paying him. I mean, just some of the stuff he was creating against a Michigan defense that is not terrible, by the way. That was not the problem for Michigan. Again, we'll circle back to them in just a second. But the atmosphere, too, at the stadium, now I was not there, but, listening to Josh Pate the other night and, sort of seeing his stuff on social media while he was at the game, the atmosphere was great. I think in his words, I'll kind of steal his words here. This game this past Saturday, from an atmospheric standpoint for Oklahoma, should have been a Tennessee game last year. Now, I guess you can make the argument for the Bama game last year, but that was up later in the year. Everyone was kind of, a little bit checked out. The vibe wasn't as intense as it was early last year for the Tennessee game. This is what the Tennessee game should have been last year. It was electric. The fans were in it. The atmosphere, from what I can tell on TV and on social media posts that I saw, electric, amazing atmosphere. I've always wanted to go to Norman, not only, as a fan of college football, but, just to experience that place. And, not to mention, too, they have the Storm Prediction Center, National Weather Service folks there in Norman. Of course, Oklahoma OU is a meteorology school. A lot of famous people, storm chasers, meteorologists come through there. So, someone who's a fan of atmospheric science, kind of a dream to actually go out there and visit that place. But overall for Oklahoma, again, defense played well. Offense, sweet and sour. Definitely some moments where you kind of look to go, that wasn't necessarily that clean, but hey, look, we have an entire season. Well, we'll see how this thing develops, but overall, very good for Oklahoma, especially on defense. That was a very good performance. Now, for Michigan, my opinion of Michigan this year and Bryce Underwood and whatnot has not changed. My opinion of him has not changed. It was not a good performance. Now, I will say he didn't have any glaring oh man, this guy totally sucks moments as a quarterback. He didn't. He looks somewhat reasonably calm. It wasn't a total meltdown, but I think what is clear for Michigan, this isn't something I'm going to keep on harping on throughout the year because it's kind of obvious now. If they're going to need help in the receiving core going forward, after this year, obviously can't do it this year, but they're going to have to either attack the portal, which is more likely, or, along with that, and also, probably going to have to, spend money in recruiting as well, or at least spend time and money in recruiting resources and stuff. But yeah, both portal recruiting, however, what you need to do, I think if you're Michigan, find a way to get better receivers. Because the guys you have right now, again, are the same group of people or group of receivers that you had last year for Alex Orji when you thought he was being the starter, and you guys are going to do this option run stuff, and he could even do that, Orji, because he wasn't even that, that good of a thrower, even just as a, I don't know, a mid thrower, I guess, of football. But Yeah, so you guys need help in the receiving core. That's pretty clear. When the portal cycle starts up, which I think it's now only one, so the spring one doesn't exist anymore. By the way, that's sort of a news thing that's been sort of under the radar a little bit. But yeah, you guys definitely need help there. Again, quarterback was not the issue. Defense, totally not the issue. And I think for Michigan and your future with Sherm or whomever it's going to be going forward with them, with Bryce Underwood, I think it is important to think that you can't waste this guy. I mean, you saw this with Jane Daniels at LSU, and you saw it with Cam Ward last year, where with them it was the defense was totally garbage, and Cam Ward and Jane Daniels were superheroes, had the cape on, whereas this year it's different. The defense is not the problem. The problem is the folks around Bryce Underwood. So I think it's to Michigan's benefit to try to get some better receivers around him by any means necessary. And trust me, they should be a very attractive place to get guys in the portal based on who you have under center. So that's sort of the positives there for Michigan, even a loss. And again, my opinion of them has not changed at all for this year. They kind of is what it is, So, yeah, let's talk about this one. This is one I'm sure a lot of folks have, there's been a lot of things to say about it. There's really not much to really add on to it because it's, this is now a couple of days late. But South Florida beat Florida. I was watching this game very closely along with the Kentucky Ole Miss game. I believe there was another one going on at the same time. But a very entertaining game if you're not a fan of either of these schools. Well, just if you're a Florida fan. But, very entertaining game, low-scoring game, which was interesting. Give props to South Florida, man. Again, this is two big games in a row that they have won, or at least two reasonably good opponents. Boise State being one now. You beat UF in Gainesville. As you will see in the Tuesday poll, South Florida has not only crashed the poll. Hey, look, we had them out after their Boise win. I will say, shamefully, we should have had them in a little bit earlier. But we have made a tone for it, and you'll see where they are. Well, you'll see it on Twitter later today or tomorrow, but you'll hear later where they are in the Tuesday poll for this week. But just an amazing defensive performance, too. I mean, I know on the Florida side of things, there's other reasons as to why this game was so low scoring. But, look, you guys came in there, you out-coached them. You guys look more prepared. You guys look more enthusiastic about winning this game. And, heck, you saw it on the videos that got leaked out. We're not leaked, but we're circulating of, like, the South, the USF coaching staff leaving the press box, and they're heading to the locker room. And they're all, jumping up and down and whatnot. Just amazing. That's college football, and I certainly, love seeing that enthusiasm from those guys. Alex Galesh, him, and John Sturm were all over in Tulane, or I guess, over in New Orleans at Tulane. Both of these guys are going to get head coaching jobs at major schools in the southeastern region here pretty soon. I think that's pretty clear now. I think a lot of folks, if you didn't notice Alex Galesh, you probably should have, right? He almost beat Bama a couple years ago, and they were kind of doing it last year, and then Bama sort of flexed their muscles really, really late. But this Alex Galesh guy, look, he's part of the Tennessee coaching tree. He runs the same, Baylor Bryles, veer and shoot stuff. That's kind of where, or that's kind of what is attracting for a lot of these programs, and certainly fans. They have that style of offense, and I think that's going to be very attractive for a number of jobs in the Southeast that could be coming open here this year or towards the end of this regular season for this year. So Alex Galesh and then the Vols, good job. Your reward is to play Miami on the road on the CW. Yeah. So I know that's not sarcasm either. That's very exciting to have that game on the CW of all places. Ranked matchup with Miami and South Florida. Absolute cinema. So we'll be tuning in, of course, for that game. We'll eventually preview that game. Not today, I don't think. Let me check here. Do we have that game on here? No, but we'll preview it on the Thursday show along with Notre Dame and Texas A&M, which will be Thursday, along with the other stuff we do on Thursday's show. But yeah, congrats to South Florida. Huge win for them for that program. Certainly a landmark victory, definitely up there. Going back to 2007 when you beat Auburn, and also beat, I believe, a top 5 team at the time, West Virginia, with Pat White and Rich Rod. So definitely this will be up there with the biggest wins in school history. So how about that? As for Florida, there's not much to add from what other folks have said. I mean, they looked unprepared. They just looked like, use a term from a former UF coach, Jim McElwain. It kind of looked like, dead fish at the seafood aisle at the grocery store. Just looked completely lifeless, listless. Just the game plan too, like the offensively, the stylistically, it just looked bland and very generic. Look, I'm going to say I was totally high on Florida, but look, I was buying into it. I see this is the tough thing of Florida and Billy Napier. I don't hate Billy Napier. I know a lot of folks are doing it right now. That's fine. That's warranted after kind of what happened at times last year and now what's happening now. That's warranted. That's understandable. But the thing is, I don't think a lot of folks realize that it's not a total disaster, at least in terms of the organizational stuff. Josh Pate has said this too. I mean, if you knew when I've listened to him, Josh, when he's visited Billy Napier twice now, I think he did it this past year and last year. He said the same thing every time he's came back from there. Organizationally, with the staffing and whatnot, it looks like most of these other teams who are competing for national championships. It looks no different than Ohio State or Bama or Clemson or Texas or even Texas A&M. It's all the same. It's up there. I mean, they check the box. I mean, organizationally, nutrition, staff, strength and conditioning, they're all there. It's the on-field stuff that just completely ruins it for them. Bud over on Cover 3, he said it before, and I'll echo his sentiment. Bill Napier is not an offensive genius. He is not. He's a good organizer. He's really good in the organizational stuff, good of building a staff. Kind of like the Saban model of a million different guys with the polo shirts and the team photos and whatnot. He's good at doing that. He's very. I think that's clear from people who I've listened to and from what I've observed. He's good at doing that. But it turns out on the field stuff, whether it's lack of imagination on offense, him not being a offensive savant. The clock management, even worse than Deion Sanders last week against Georgia Tech. It's just really weird. They're serious, not taking your timeouts, just letting the clock melt down, and not to mention, again, just the overall genericness of the offense. And speaking of wasting talent, I mean Florida. I mean it's kind of weird because now you're starting to hear people now hating on DJ Lagway, and look, I can understand that, but you have to understand the context. And most of this is coming from, the flat-by NFL types who did not realize that Lagway was hurt during spring. He was basically a no-show during spring because of him recovering from injuries from the previous season. Then, of course, he gets hurt over the summer, so he couldn't practice for a week in fall camp, and he had no time to get with his, wide receivers and build a cohesion with them. And, it didn't necessarily bite them against Long Island because Long Island, they did actually beat a MAC team yesterday, or not yesterday, Saturday. I think, was it one of the Michigan schools in the MAC? But so, hey, maybe that win is maybe a little bit better than you thought it was. But it didn't show up against Long Island that, he just didn't, that didn't necessarily bite them against Long Island, but it did against South Florida. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, he was not around for spring and fall camp, and it showed that he had no cohesion with them. Not to mention, the staff for some reason not running him as much. And I get it. You probably go into the game sort of thinking, hey, it's a G5 team. We can take it easy. It may look ugly, but we're receiving everything for LSU. But it just looked worse than generic. It just looked kind of bland, very boring, lumbering, and slow. And again, this is coming from someone who, look, I've defended Billy Napier. I can't defend him with, I can't defend him on the clock management stuff, the offensive stuff and whatnot. The organizational stuff, I will defend. He should be, defended on that. He's done very well with that. But the on the field stuff, the lack of imagination on offense, him not being an offensive savant, and him, very, very staunch about calling the plays. I don't know. I don't know what to say. I mean, you're wasting DJ Lagway. I can make all the excuses for him this year so far, seeing he didn't practice a lot in fall camp or spring camp. But even with that being said, I mean, it's still, I think, clear now that they're wasting him. They're wasting his time. He isn't this bad. Based on everyone I've talked to, or not talked to, listened to and observed, this kid is everything. He's just as talented as, guys like Bryce Underwood at Michigan. He's kind of up there with the skill set and the athleticism. And you saw it at times last year, but I think what's also true as well, and I think this is what Josh Pate said on his Sunday show, that DJ Lagway, while he did play a lot last year, he hasn't played a lot. He has played a very small sample size, and I think you're seeing that he is still growing. And look, they could beat LSU this weekend. There's a very small chance, but it's possible. Much like I stated on the show Thursday, that there's a chance that they could have been saving some stuff for LSU, and that could be still the case. But I mean, it's not even that. It just went super, super generic, and it was very slow and again lumbering. I don't know. I mean, look, good for South Florida. I mean, this will obviously propel them to potentially being a playoff team, regardless of what I think happens at Miami. Just win the American, and you're probably in, right? This is kind of the Boise State protocol here. So it's ironic they beat Boise State. So there's that game. Clemson, Troy, one hit on this one. We'll touch more on this. I believe, are we previewing the Georgia Tech? Yes, we are. Well, so we'll kind of circle back to this game again. But this was very concerning. Much like a lot of folks, I thought Troy's going to do it. What's really weird is that it's almost not 10 years exactly, but it's almost 10 years to the weekend, I believe, the same weekend where Troy almost beat that Clemson team that won the national championship, a game that nobody remembers. So, it's happened before. What's up? I don't know. Maybe if you're Clemson, maybe just don't schedule Troy anymore, because every single time you've seen the play them, it's always a close and exciting game. But if you're a Troy fan, we'll give them props, man. And they really came in there with an attitude, and they were having fun and, getting turnovers early and instead of setting in the attitude in the first half. Clemson started to flex their muscles a little bit, but much like the LSU game, and this is now, I don't know if it's becoming a trend or not. Of course, we'll touch on this a little bit later when we get into the game against, Troy, or not Troy, game against Georgia Tech. But, I don't know if it's a trend or not. I don't know. The receivers did not step up. The running game is atrocious. The Randall kid who was a receiver last year, he can't do it. He's too small. He fumbles the football, or at least he fumbled it at one point on Saturday and against LSU, I think. And it's just, I don't know, man. It really is kind of sad to see where Clemson is right now. Look, they could, like I just said before, they could, even if they win, they could go on the road and impress people by beating Georgia Tech and doing so pretty significantly, which is not impossible, although it's very unlikely. But I don't know, that game, certainly, I don't know what else to say. That was a little weird to have that game be what it was. And again, maybe Clemson should not play Troy anymore. I think that's kind of clear. Iowa State, Iowa, very boring game, but fun. Again, it's not my type of style. For Iowa State, huge one to get over a rival. First time in 6 years, I believe, since you've been, or I believe it's not 6 years, it's 6 tries over there in Ames to finally win. Get a home win over your big instant rival. Very good. Iowa State, man, they just find ways to win. Again, even as it looks sloppy. We'll talk about Iowa here in a second, but their offense, Iowa State wasn't much better. But Becht and all of them, the word I can describe them as, well, it did not look pleasingly good. They stayed calm. They did their job, and they were able to capitalize on a horrible Iowa offense. And what's really weird about Iowa is, with bringing in Gradowski from the FCS level, you thought there was going to be a bit of an upgrade there. In the words of Josh Pape, instead of Gradowski helping Iowa, it's Iowa, well, not necessarily what Josh said, but kind of paraphrasing. Instead of Gradowski coming in and helping Iowa, improving them, it's the opposite. Iowa is helping Gradowski degrade himself and become a worse player than he really is. I can't imagine that this is how bad this kid is. He's not. From what I've seen on the film on YouTube, this kid is not as bad as he was the week before, during week 1, or this past week. So, look, I know a lot of folks love the slow lumbering, power football stuff, but you have to even those folks have to admit that the Iowa offense, even with the changes at coordinators, and I kind of bought into a little bit too. I thought they were going to be different this year. They're not. It's the same boring, lumbering, very, it's the type of offense that it makes you want to take a nap. It's just not very appealing. And again, I know a lot of folks like it because, it's, running the football and clock management. That by doing that, while yes, you do control the clock, and yes, you do sort of control the game. You could also very easily lose the game if you make a crucial mistake. So I don't want to hear about, ball control and manhood. It's, well, number one, you can say all that, but I mean, number one, again, it, doesn't always work, especially when you have an offense that has a terrible offensive line and whatnot. And also, it's just not the way where college football is going anymore. Like college football, even the NFL too, has sort of been removing itself from this, power football, control the clock, shorten the game thing. It's not that anymore. And Iowa, yet again, is kind of the poster child for a dying breed of offense. And I'm not saying that Kirk Ferentz needs to go or anything. No, he's not. But whenever he ends up resigning or retiring, which I think it's probably going to happen soon rather than later. If you're Iowa, you need to find someone who can actually run a modern offense. Okay, yeah, I think that's pretty clear. So that's some of the thoughts there for the games of this weekend. And after I get my quick drink here, we will begin to preview the games for this weekend, or at least some of them. Again, we'll do the Miami and Notre Dame games on Thursday. So like Miami, USF, Notre Dame, Texas A&M. We'll move all of those to Thursday. We're doing the other games today. So, that's how it's going to work. I wasn't adding them in, but the show would have been really super long. So, we'll move them to the Tuesday, or we'll move them to Thursday show along with upset alerts and whatnot. So. Again, if you are new here, again, be sure to subscribe, like the channel, or subscribe to the channel, like the videos, streams, and whatnot. And also be sure to follow on X, Twitter, and also on Spotify. Vanderbilt goes to South Carolina. Let me ask you this: did you even know this game was happening? According to some folks, they think people aren't paying attention to it. I am. Certainly, other folks who I follow are, and this is the first game we're talking about. Why not? This should be a fun game. FanDuel line. As the time I was doing this, I don't think these lines have changed that much in 15 hours. But the FanDuel line, I believe at the time I was recording this, of South Carolina is a 5.5-point favorite at home. By the way, which is weird, right? Top 15 team, only a 5.5-point favorite at home. That doesn't usually happen, especially against puny little Vanderbilt. Well, this isn't puny little Vanderbilt. This is I'm not gonna consider elite teams or not. But this is if you're to do, I guess, tiers in the SEC, this is a Tier 2 team. This is a very good team, Vanderbilt. They are 2-0. They are coming off a huge win at Virginia Tech. I didn't mention it in the recap, but for week 2. But, let's just get the cat out of the bag here. Vanderbilt probably has ended Brent Pryce's coaching career there in Plattsburgh. I think it's pretty clear that he's probably going to get fired here pretty soon. They scored, I believe, 34 points. And the second half, I believe, they won the game going away after trailing 10-0, which is the definition of insanity. There's reasons to be very concerned here if you're South Carolina. This is a very dangerous team. This could end up being the best game of the day this weekend, or at least one of them. Scratching out one of them. It could be the game. And, according to some folks, no one's talking about it. But like I said, we are. Keys to the game here for South Carolina. Sellers needs help at receiver. Lenore Sellers. And look, Sellers is great. He's a good dual threat guy. Of course, he can run around doing that type of stuff, but he needs help. Outside of Nick Harbor, they have no receiver help. They just don't. Same with their ground game. Their ground game has also not been necessarily there all year, especially in that Virginia Tech game. Speaking of Virginia Tech, and what you struggled in, by the way, which is interesting considering Vanderbilt. You're playing them and they just blew them out. Now, some of that could be that team quit, which is, obviously kind of, I think that's pretty clear at the same time. But, you just need help there on offense. Defensively, I'm more confident in, despite the fact that, you lost all those guys in the NFL. But, for the first couple of weeks, defense has been fairly good. But offense, outside of Sellers, man, there's no real help. You have Nick Harbor, you have a bunch of people who have not yet to step up. So you need help. Can any of these guys do it? Is it, it being a major SEC game at home, first time, or, you're ranked very high for the first time in a while. Who knows? Maybe it could. Home field advantage helps. It could be the difference in this game, potentially. As much as a lot of folks, clown on South Carolina, being one of these, take the check, take the losses type programs, which, they kind of are. But once in the blue moon, you can get them in a year where fans are energized. Look, they show up regardless. Even the team sucks or really, really good. Back in when they were consistently good during the superior years when the SEC East was a free for all, because Georgia and Florida and Tennessee weren't taking it seriously. That place is insane. Even I haven't been there before, but on TV. Even go back last year to the LSU game last year. A very great environment up there and very underrated. So that could be the difference here for Vanderbilt. Pavia and the offense need to play a perfect game and carry their momentum from last week. Now, I know a lot of folks sort of, disregard momentum. It's a real thing, especially within seasons now. In terms of talking about momentum from one year to the next, obviously that's, especially now, it's a lot different because you have basically a whole new team of, players moving on or transferring out. But I think momentum and within a season is a big deal. Vanderbilt has it. They do. And this is, again, a very good staff. You have Clark Lee, the sole, staff. Jerry Kill, I believe, is still on the staff there. You have general manager Barton Simmons is there too. So a lot of familiar faces, especially if you're, a fan of 247 and those folks, Cover 3. And this is probably, at least so far for South Carolina, the best coaching staff they faced by far this year. This staff in Nashville, way better than folks in Blacksburg. And that's kind of insane. Imagine telling yourself that 10 years ago that South Carolina in or at least so far after 2 games, with the next game coming up, that the Vanderbilt coaching staff is better than the staff in Blacksburg, Virginia Tech, which they faced week 1. So imagine telling yourself that 10 years ago. So I think for South Carolina too, it's just handling this offense. It's it's a weird offense with Pavia and his creativity. It's kind of rule number 1 there to stop Vanderbilt, and also sort of I know you can't predict these, but turnovers can sometimes help getting crucial stops early in the game, and there's a possibility here where South Carolina, if things go perfectly, they should be able to out-talent Vanderbilt for the most part. I don't know, coaching wise, I think it's actually more even than people think to a certain extent. But if you're South Carolina, if you're Shane Beamer, gotta get on the early, gotta build a big lead and don't off the gas. If you don't, this team can still be pretty dangerous. And I don't think those folks here in Columbia want to get into a shootout with South Carolina, which is very possible. Or with Vanderbilt, which is very possible. I've been going back and forth on this game. Initially, I thought South Carolina after on Sunday. Then I thought, Vanderbilt could possibly do it. Be really huge for them. Again, building off that momentum with the Virginia Tech game. And once again, sort of making another announcement to college football. Then I went back to South Carolina, and now, since yesterday and most of today, I don't know who I was going to pick. But thinking about it and just thinking about the fact that no one's talking about Vanderbilt, no one probably watched that Virginia Tech game. I did a little bit. No one's really paying attention to them. No one even thought about Vanderbilt potentially being 2-0 going into this game. They've been the real threat to beat South Carolina. Again, that spread is below a touchdown for a reason. After really thinking about it, the fact that those folks in Nashville, again, organizational, again, nothing against Shane Beamer and them. Shane Beamer is a really good coach. I like him as a coach. And he's, passionate, enthusiastic, does a really good job with a lot of things. But those folks in Nashville do a really good job too, man. Barton Simmons is the GM. Jerry Kill, I believe, is still on the staff there. Clark Lee, who's a very smart coach, academic as well, in terms of, the way he's, just a college football junkie. I'm going to go on a limb here. I think Vanderbilt pulls this off. Somehow, some way. I think they're going to do it. I think the frailty here for South Carolina, if this were to happen, which I'm predicting, I think Vanderbilt wins and they cover slightly. I think it's the fact that Sellers just has no help around him, and he cannot be the entire offense. Now, he is a part of the offense. Yes, he's a centerpiece, but him running around can't be the offense for them. And they have no other help at receiver. The ground game, at least at this point, and not to mention, too, I know, everyone uses the transitive property, but, this could be, a sign here that Vanderbilt went into Lane Stadium in a harder environment and beat Virginia Tech and blew them out in the second half. Whereas South Carolina played that same Virginia Tech team on a neutral field, and the score at one point was 10-8, going to the third quarter, I believe. I think Vanderbilt's going to do it, and I think they make a huge statement. And if you weren't thinking about Vanderbilt now, you will be after Saturday. So And as you will see in the Tuesday poll, Vanderbilt made some moves in the poll. They are ranked in the poll. So next game here, Tennessee, Georgia. This is a 3:30 game. College Game Day is going to be here as well. Like I said on Twitter, this was obviously not their first choice. They were likely going to go to, Baton Rouge for LSU, Florida. You can thank Alex Galesh and South Florida for ruining it for them. So now they are going here, and I believe this is the game that Kirk and Chris are calling. So if you couldn't tell, yes, their original plan was obviously not. And I think even Kirk mentioned it towards the end of the Oklahoma game when they announced where they were going. And he said, yeah, we have to kind of pivot on the fly here. So, yeah, it's pretty clear this is not their original stop. And they were all in on going to Baton Rouge. And obviously the plan changed really quickly. So, Tennessee, Georgia. The line on this game, what do you think it is? Georgia minus 10, minus 15, minus 100 maybe. Georgia minus 3.5. You can bet Georgia all you want. You can bet them to, make them cover, or you think they're going to cover. I won't do it, but we're using, of course, FanDuel is not a sponsor of the show, but we use them for research purposes to sort of get a vibe of what the folks in Vegas kind of think. So what's the keys to the game here? And a 3-point spread here for Georgia. For Tennessee, Joey Aguilar and that run game for Tennessee needs to step up. I think a lot of folks still, even to this day, even ever since Heupel has been there, even going back to when this offense was created under Art Briles, again, not going to the whole off-the-field issues with him at Baylor, but just on-field stuff, even going back to when he was coaching there before he got let go because of the scandal, and rightfully so. That offense that they run there at Tennessee, the veer and shoot stuff, the Baylor stuff, it's not a traditional air raid. It's definitely more of a balanced offense. They do run the football a lot. And for Tennessee, with Aguilar offering the offense, I think through 2 weeks, I think you're kind of seeing, there's no, look, the talent with him and Nico, I know a lot of folks are now clowning on Nico for being a bust. And look, that could be the case, but still, in terms of overall talent coming out of high school, Nico was a better prospect coming out of high school. And look, it happens sometimes, Malachi Nelson, very recent example of that, where, sometimes you have guys as 5 stars, they don't pan out for various reasons. And, those recruiting services don't lie to you. It's just when they get to college from high school, it's up to them. So Aguilar, I'm not too concerned about him. I think he's doing okay. Now, of course, his turnover proneness, we haven't seen it yet, so that does make me slightly concerned, but we'll see. That's something that we'll monitor. But for me, a bigger deal is the Tennessee ground game. They need to step up. Now, their running back, Star Thomas, I believe, is the starter, right? He doesn't need to be, O.J. Simpson or Eric Dickerson. He just needs to be the best version of himself. And they need to use him a lot, because if for him to win this game, it's not going to be their passing attack for Tennessee. I think it's going to be them being physical and matching Georgia's physicality. They're going to have to try it, and they will do it. Home field for Tennessee helps here. Neyland, every single, Josh Pace talked about it. Every single time he's been there, at least this decade, they've won. And Neyland, we've been to the Bama game, and who knows, maybe, third time's the charm for, having Josh Pate there again. But this is going to help Tennessee. It's early in the year, too, so everyone's all bought in. And that's Georgia's first big road test. Georgia has not been on the road yet. And that's a fairly young team, right? New starting quarterback, a lot of newness. And, we'll talk about Georgia here in a second. But, they did not look very, very good, if you will, against Austin Peay. But, could have been looking ahead, not to mention the lightning delay and stuff like that. That kind of made that game really weird. But defense, super test needs to step up. They they're probably the most concerned part of this game for Tennessee that I'm concerned with. Going back to the Syracuse game, they gave up, look, they just kind of say what it is. They gave up a whole, it's not an accoutrement, but a collection of big plays that, were concerning against Syracuse, but they need to step up for sure. Because Georgia, I guess you can pivot to them. Their wide receivers need to be the difference here, because they have a really good receiver core. That is, no one's seen yet, but based on, going to fall camp and spring and how they, how people were evaluating Georgia, their receiver room is massively upgraded from what it was last year. And that's something that you probably didn't think about going to this year. Traditionally, you think of, Kirby Smart in Georgia, run the football, game control, whatnot. No, man, they have good receivers too. And if Tennessee, if they allow big pass plays like they did against, Syracuse, which is even, a larger, size pass plays, and they could lose this game. And that's how they would lose, is if those receivers are the difference for Georgia. O-line for Georgia has to be a factor. It's non-negotiable. Has to. if they want to try to, establish any run game, which, to my knowledge, I don't think they've really done a good job doing so far, and even going back to last year. That has to be present for them to win. Of course, the coaching edge here clearly goes to Georgia, a much better collection of staff, much better, collection of, personnel and whatnot and coordinators and stuff. But, Tennessee is good too. Josh Heupel, very, he's not a friend of the program, but someone who I admire as a coach and as an offensive fan. I like his offense and I like that style. So very interesting coaching dynamic here. And, we've seen this over the years, and we've seen Tennessee-Georgia games over the years, even, going back to the 1 versus 2 matchup a couple years ago, last year's matchup, the ones at home for Tennessee going against those, Death Star Georgia teams. A lot of those games have not been very close. It makes me wonder now, with all these changes, the transfer portal, especially impacting teams like Georgia, who they don't have the depth anymore necessarily. They have good players up front, on top or below, they're not always there anymore. So you wonder with, substituting guys out and whatnot with this offense that they run, how would that work? How's that going to look? Especially, again, being on the road for the first time. And, for Tennessee, again, will they allow big pass plays for, this Georgia offense, which, again, has not shown anything to sort of, I guess, make you think they will have a good passing attack. I think the receivers are really good, but I don't know. At least I don't know exactly for sure, but I can make a prediction on it. But I went back and forth on this game a lot. Initially, I was actually going to pick Tennessee to win. Then I went to Georgia. Then I went back to Tennessee. Now, much like the game we just talked about, South Carolina Vanderblit, earlier today, I don't know. But the more I thought about it, I trust Georgia. I trust that coaching staff there. I trust those guys and, Kirby Smart and his sort of, ability to stop that Tennessee veer and shoot stuff, and that staff. They've seen it so many times now. It's almost like second nature. Until I see it happen, until I see Kirby Smart and them and that whole, coaching staff defensively get flustered by this offense, I'm picking Georgia to win. But I think this is a very close competitive game. I think Tennessee really covers here. I think this could be like a borderline overtime game. Like, last second field goal, Georgia, strolls down the field and they were able to, they're able to kick a last second field goal. I could definitely see that happening. So I think Georgia does win the game. I think Tennessee covers. I think Georgia's right receivers will be the difference in this game. And I do predict here, again, I'm not saying this is guaranteed to happen, but I do predict that those receivers will be the difference in this game. And I think Gunnar Stockton will I think that passing attack for Georgia might be able to flex their muscles a little bit for the first time this season. And that's very possible. So take Georgia to win. I think Tennessee covers. Very competitive game. So, yeah, this could be a very wild game there in Knoxville. Definitely going to be a very interesting spectacle, too. You have game day coming into town. I imagine Peyton Manning's probably going to be your guest picker, probably, which is cool. Nothing wrong with the sheriff coming in back to those old stomping grounds. But, yeah, I'm definitely expecting a very juiced atmosphere. If any of those past Bama games, for example, if they're any indication, this should be yet again another massive crowd, another great environment there in Knoxville. So very excited to watch that. Next game, another one that sounds like the Vanderbilt game no one's talking about. Strangely, no one's talking about. Some people are, like Josh Pate, guys are on Cover 3, and me, but no one else is talking about it. Very, very odd because it's a big deal. Clemson going to Georgia Tech. The line on this game for the Clemson Georgia Tech game. What do you think it is? Sort of like the Georgia game, right? What are you thinking? Georgia, are Clemson by 10, 11, 15, a million, a billion? It's Clemson minus 3.5. I am very concerned about Clemson here. If last week was any indication, again, we don't know for sure, right? We don't know if that Troy game was a trend or is it yet another indication of where this season is going. I don't know. It could, right? You could go into this game, and this game, it gets out of hand quickly, which it very well might. Considering where Clemson is, at least, have they quit, whatnot. But, given Dabo Swinney hasn't really had that happen before, at least to a large extent. I don't think so. But, it'd be interesting to, see how this team, did they look motivated? Because they didn't look motivated last week. And, again, you look at that schedule. If you're Clemson, you go, Georgia Tech, okay, cool. No, you should be concerned. This is a game that should be getting your attention. As my attention, as Josh Pate's attention, I don't know about everyone else. For Clemson, can those wide receivers step up? I don't think they're going to, man. I mean, it's been 2 weeks now, but they have not stepped up. The Clemson game versus LSU or last year against Troy, they just have not. I don't know if they're going to. The ground game, just mentioned it. Remember recapping that Troy game, non-existent. I don't expect it to be existent this week. I think they're going to struggle because no one bring Key in that team. Emphasizing physicality. That's gonna be tough, especially in a hostile environment. And yes, the stadium is being under construction a little bit, but it should be still a tough environment. I expect it to be full capacity, full crowd there in Atlanta. But I think for Clemson to win, they just really need to establish some wide receiver or just at least some semblance of a passing game, or at least show it. Because when I look at Clemson, like Garrett Riley, like everybody that have everything Dabo's done, besides really emphasizing the portal, has not been that bad. I mean, he's overhauled the staff. He's brought in Tom Allen, which defense is not the problem for Clemson, but he brought in Garrett Riley, and last year it seems like okay, things are trending up a little bit at some some parts during the year, but it's not been going well this year, which is surprising to me. Even with having a good quarterback in Klubnik, it's just not been there, and that's scary for me because Georgia Tech, talking about them. They're a very physical team. They're up there with any team in the country, frankly. I mean, we've had them in the top 15 of our, Tuesday poll. And I going back to the summer, I thought this team was going to be a very, very, very good, very, very, very good team and potentially even going to the, ACC championship game, which is still on the table here for Georgia Tech. I mean, this is Georgia Tech's Super Bowl, right? I mean, this is the game of the year for them. This is absolutely the game that they have that circled quietly, if you will, for a very long time. I think for Georgia Tech, if they want to win this game, is, well, number one, don't turn the ball over because Haynes King, well, I have liked what I see from Georgia Tech, have not liked the turnover stuff. So let's hope that it's not, that's not going to become a trend for them again, like it was a couple years ago, and it was not last year. So hopefully don't turn the ball over. Haynes King plays a clean game, and he needs to be the better quarterback here. I think he has to for them to win, and I think he will. Again, for Clemson, and it goes back to, again, the defense, I expect them to at least represent themselves pretty well. I don't know what I'm getting from the offense this week. I don't know. Look, they could score 30 points and wouldn't surprise me. They could score 10 points, wouldn't surprise me. So I look at the spread again, it's 3.5, and I feel very confident in this. I think the wrong team's favored. I think Georgia Tech's going to win. I think they cover. I do not like the vibe of this team. I do not like the vibe that I saw last weekend after the LSU game. Something just feels wrong in Clemson. I mean, the way I can describe Clemson right now is just I don't recognize them anymore. I don't. Unless they prove it to me. If they go to Georgia Tech and they blow them out, then look, maybe last week was a total aberration, total mirage. I don't think it is. So yeah, the wrong team's favored. I think Georgia Tech's going to win, and I think they cover. Look, I could have completely misdiagnosed Clemson here. Maybe they go win Saturday, but. I just believe the wrong team's favored here. I think Georgia Tech. I think this, much like the Vanderbilt South Carolina game, this is going to be an announcement for Georgia Tech. And I think after this game, and shamefully, I think folks should have been taking them seriously even after last year, even though beat Florida State and Miami. Both those teams at the time were top 10 teams, but they lose to Georgia and everyone kind of forgets about them. I didn't. They're still a really good team. So, yeah, even though you should have known, or at least been aware of Georgia Tech before, after this weekend, shamefully, I think a lot of folks are going to realize that, this Georgia Tech team's actually pretty serious. So, yeah, wrong team's favorite. I think Georgia Tech's going to win, and I think they cover. And I'll just end with this. I don't recognize Clemson anymore. I don't, which is sad for me because I wanted Clemson to be so good this year, and I shamefully bought into the hype, but I don't recognize them anymore. So, last game previewing here, and then we'll move on to the Tuesday poll and Bucs Falcons reaction. Florida, LSU. LSU hosting Florida. This is the 7:30 game on ABC. I believe it's Sean McDonald and that crew, Greg and Molly, will be when this game begin. Excuse me. Definitely was not the crew I think those folks in Baton Rouge were expecting. I think they were anticipating this to be college game day and Christian Kirk calling the game. But again, you can thank Florida and you can also thank South Florida for ruining that for ruining that opportunity for you guys. So unfortunately, you're not getting the game day stuff. But yeah, you're getting a very decent crew with Sean and Greg and Molly. So it's nice to have those that crew being down there. Very good crew. But line on this game, according to FanDuel, is LSU minus 8.5. Makes sense to me. So when we talked about this back when we were previewing week 1, we didn't really do it last week. Is with any of these big spread games or if anything over a touchdown, we all of our shows do this too. Is sort of paint how the upset would happen here. Because obviously LSU, let's not make it a secret. I think they're going to win and cover here. I think they should be able to flex their muscles. No, that Louisiana Tech game did not concern me as much as people think it should. Yes, was it a weird score? I think it also was a look at spot, but unlike Florida, they took it seriously a little bit to a certain extent, and at this point, I'm not too concerned. Now, while I am picking LSU to win, and I think they cover, how would the upset happen for UF? How would they do it? How would LSU lose to Florida, and how would Florida find a way to right the ship here and circle the wagons? Well, you have to look at last week as you were at least thinking about it, as whether or not it was a trend or not. I mean, has Billy Naiper lost a locker room yet? I don't know for sure. Now, we'll know, I think, come Saturday. If this ends up being what I think it's going to be, potentially a, pretty boring game, unfortunately, then that's probably a sign that they've lost the locker room and they're quitting. Unlike last year, which did not happen, by the way. They did not quit last year. I think a blowout here with a fully healthy team, because last year when they lost to Texas back in November last year, the score looked bad because they were starting the kid from Yale. That's not the case right now. Like, DJ Lagway, at least from what we know, he's fully healthy, and the only problem is he's been missing a lot of time before back during fall camp and spring. But Florida, can they be physical on offense to combat LSU? Because I think LSU defensively should have a field day with Florida. If what we saw this past Saturday, translates to in about 4 or 5 days from now, the LSU have their way with them. So Florida, hey, look, if you're Billy Naiper and that staff there, you better hope that this team has a different mentality going into that game. But they bring it because it's all there, right? You have DJ Lag, we have all these, you have all this, decent talent, at least in the top end. It's all there, and it's not impossible for them to at least be competitive. The pass defense for Florida who needs to step up. The fundamentals and stuff we'll get to in a minute, but just everything's there for them, right? You have DJ Lagway, who by far is probably the most talented quarterback LSU has faced. But who knows? They could go into Baton Rouge this Saturday, and they may lose the game. But there's a inspired effort. And I don't know if that's good enough to keep Billy's job. Probably not now, but they could go in there and really compete. They could, and there's a very narrow path. But that's how it had to happen. If this team, they're still bought in. They have the physicality there. DJ Lagway just goes off. They play loose, knowing that they lost last week, and they're not the team who is going in there buttoned up and really nervous to make a mistake. That's how it has to happen. And another thing too is fundamental stuff. Talked about the game management stuff earlier that cost them the game Saturday. Needs to be there for this game. 100%. Fundamental procedures need to be important for them to have a chance in this game to either be close or to outright win the game. I can't trust them right now. Much like with Clemson, I don't recognize Florida right now. I don't. So I'm taking LSU to win and cover. Again, there's a very narrow path here for Florida. And look, there's a path for them to be competitive with them, clearly. There's also a path for them to win. Would it surprise me a little bit? It'll make me happy knowing that it's still there, that team, that talent that they have there, and that mentality that they had, or at least the mentality that I thought they were going to have, it's all still there. That it's just, again, much like Clemson, I don't recognize Florida right now. I don't. So, yeah, I'm picking LSU to win and cover, but, this upset for it to happen. Look, we've seen upsets already this year. Go not just with Florida, but, with Bama losing to Florida State. We've seen, stranger things, not the TV show, but we've seen stranger things happen this year. So, Water, real quick, and we'll do the Tuesday poll, and we'll do Bucs Falcons reaction, and we'll get out of here with this edition of the show, or at least of this episode. So, let me do that real quick. Tuesday poll, week 3. like I've been sort of teasing a little bit, both on X and on here, a lot of movement this week. A lot of movement in the poll. Let me pull it up here on the spreadsheet. Yes, I'm keeping track of the previous weeks too to sort of compare where they're at. And I guess we can do that starting here. So we'll do what we've usually been doing, going all the way from 25 all the way down to up to 1. And trust me, there's a lot of movement here. So we're going to go from 25 to 20 here. So we have Vanderbilt debuting in the Tuesday poll. They're at 25. Makes sense to me. Missouri at 24, also be debuting. A lot of SEC teams here towards the bottom. I'll just tell you that. So Missouri at 24. So they're new. Another new team in the SEC that's debuting. Mississippi State, after a huge win over Arizona State. Didn't talk about that game in the recap. A fun game, man. Just a huge win for Mississippi State, a fan base that, as people have said before, and I echo the same sentiment, they cheer like hell. They, support the team as much, but they're under-resourced. That's, they're one of the take the losses programs here in the SEC, but huge for them. Good for them. They could totally suck the rest of the year. This is their proof of concept going forward there with Jeff Lebby and company. So, huge win for Mississippi State. I think at this point they deserve to be in. The team that dropped but still in. I mean, Florida is out. I think Ole Miss is also out as well. Did it not? Can't tell if that was thunder or not. I don't know if that was something else, but I know we've been having a lot of rain here in Jacksonville lately. But yeah, I think Florida obviously fell out. Ole Miss did not look that inspiring. Turnovers were a problem. Still won though. They play Arkansas, by the way, at home. More on that Thursday. So they dropped out. Them and Florida dropped out. South Carolina dropped, but still in. They're at 23. Or they didn't drop. They moved up. So yeah, I guess they didn't drop, but yeah, Ole Miss, Florida, they did drop out. I mean, I think for reasons that make sense, probably. I mean, look at these other teams that are also 2-0, have better resume. Vanderbilt's one of them. Same with Mississippi State. So South Carolina at 23, they move up a little bit. USC making their debut. I'll be honest, they should have been in a lot earlier, but shame on us for doing so. We're making it right. They might be a little bit low for some people, but they're there. So we'll continue to see. They're 2-0. Next up, number 20, Nebraska. They move up a little bit. They're 2-0. They're, quiet 2-0. Yes, the defense is still probably concerned, but, the offense has not been totally clean. But they do get Michigan here in a couple weeks. I believe next week, Not this week, but the coming up week. So how about that? So, yeah, 25 through 20 there. We shall move up a little bit to 20 through 15. Some movement here. Of course, Arizona State dropped out. So at 19, we have Tennessee. They've moved in. They've also debuted as well. Shamefully, we should have had them in there earlier, but we didn't. Auburn has moved up a little bit to 18. Louisville dropped a little bit after the James Madison game. Now, again, that was a game that I was expecting it to be very close, and it was. I still think they're a decent team in the ACC. They got a manageable schedule. We'll see. So Louisville dropped a little bit. Auburn moved up. So Louisville's at 17. 16 Illinois moved up. They looked good against Duke on the road. Yes, it was late, and turnovers certainly helped them from the Duke side of things. But huge win for them on the road. That was a statement win for them. At 15, Utah moving up. Very impressive team so far. Yes, I know a lot of folks probably did not watch that UCLA game, but that was pretty impressive. I don't care how bad UCLA is. You go on the road to, a Power 4 team's backyard. You deserve some credit there. So they were at 16 last week. Now, the team that moves up just a little bit here as we go to 14 through 11, Bama moved up to 14 because our teams moved down. So they're up there at 14. Not punting on them just yet. I think some of these people who are having Bama all the way down like a 20 and whatnot. I think that's a little bit too low. I think 15 to 14 range is at least around there, or maybe a little bit below. Makes sense to me. Like in between 14 to 18, I would be okay with that. Totally out of the polls. I don't agree with that. So Bama at 14. Texas A&M. They play Notre Dame this week. Again, more on that on the Thursday show. They're at 13. They didn't move. They just moved because member teams were shuffled around a little bit. They were 12 last week. Texas fell to top 10. Yes, I know they did, beat San Jose State, but it wasn't that impressive, really. It was kind of bleh. So, you know, it is what it is. Prove it to me. Going forward. Number 11, Georgia Tech. I believe that's where they were last week. Top 10 time. A lot of change here. Florida State is a top 10 team. Shamefully didn't have them there before because of the movement that was made after this past weekend. They're in the top 10. So they are there. At number 9, debuting all the way from being unranked to skyrocketing up to number 9 is South Florida. I know some folks, potentially, maybe even Josh Pate later on his show, or I think when he does his commissioner's poll on Thursday, I believe he'll probably have him higher. We have them top 10, so hey, at least give us credit for that. So they're number 9. They have probably the best resume in college football right now, outside of Ohio State. Best resume in college football. Number 8, Oklahoma. They move up into the top 10, I believe, for the first time. No, it's not the first time. They did stay where they were. And another team that also fell was Clemson. Makes sense to me. I mean, you put up that performance, you don't deserve to be ranked. Beat Georgia Tech, you'll be back. So that's all you have to do for Clemson. Georgia fell down just a little bit. I believe they were at number 4. Yes, they moved down. Notre Dame didn't play last week. They were off. They moved up to number 6. They played Texas A&M. If they win, they stay where they are. If they lose, they'll move down just a little bit, but not that far. Oregon at number 5 now. They moved up pretty significantly. Let's see here. LSU dropped down just a little bit. You know, that again, I wasn't totally concerned that Louisiana Tech game, but it was just a very 10% concern to where I did shove them down to number 4. And look, they beat Florida. They may probably just stay where they are. We'll see. Penn State, a number 3, did not move. The new number 2 team in the country in the Tuesday poll is Miami. Beat South Florida. You're probably still number 2. I don't think you'll move past Ohio State. I don't think. But yeah, Ohio State, no change there. They're still number 1. So Tuesday poll, a lot of movement, a lot of teams debuting, a lot of teams dropping out. But if you're a team that dropped out, even you're a team like Ole Miss or even Clemson, continue to win, or if you're Clemson just beating Georgia Tech, we'll welcome you back. We'll pop you back in, but at the moment you're out, and I think rightfully so. But the debuters, South Florida, Tennessee, Nebraska. Nebraska was not new. They were not new, but Auburn was not new. But yeah, Tennessee, USC, South Carolina, Mississippi State. Missouri, South Carolina is not new, but Mississippi State and Missouri, Vanderbilt, all new. TCU did drop out, but that's bye week. They were definitely borderline by staying in, but yeah, Tuesday poll. We'll release this tomorrow or later today on Twitter for you guys to gander at, and definitely, disagree with me probably a lot. So, all right, last thing here to wrap up here. Buccaneers, Falcons. The Buccaneers win at 23-20. Very entertaining game. I know a lot of folks were talking about that Jets-Steelers game. And look, that was definitely a little bit more of a high-scoring game, obviously. But this Bucs and Falcons game in the early window, 1 o'clock, very good game. Probably the best game of the day, at least early window. Now, of course, you had other games later, and last night and Monday Night Football last night, and then Sunday night were obviously better games, but this one was very sneaky. A lot of things to, talk about the positives first, and we'll get to the negatives. Positives, Emeka Egbuka already submitted himself as a clear starter for Tampa. Is he a star yet? No. But, I mean, that was very impressive. 2 touchdowns, one of them very crucial from Baker on a day where the offense, at least passing-wise, was not always there. I think some of it you can look at it as, going on the road and facing a divisional opponent, also not playing that much in the preseason, so that's kind of baked into it. But Egbuka looked really good. Offensive line, given the new shuffling around, well, the ground game was not that great, and we'll get to that in a moment. Pass protection seemed fine. Defense, the D-line for Tampa, that big stop there with, I think, what was it, around mid-quarter, I believe, or middle of the game, for that 4th and 1, stopping Bijan. Huge there with Kalijah Kancey and Vita Vea. Getting a huge stop there. So there was that. Again, Baker, when they mattered, man, he stepped up big, and he made that huge throw to Egbuka. That one ended up winning the game. And that was pretty big for them. the negatives here. The kicking game, not that great. McLaughlin missed the field goal and he missed extra point. That could very easily, cost Tampa to win the game in regulation. It did not because of one, luck, and also Younghoe Koo missing a field goal. But I guess the other negative, and I mentioned this on Twitter during the game, is that the pass defense for Tampa, for the most part, kind of looks the same. I know a lot of folks were gloating about it, saying, "Oh man, the pass defense is so improved in the preseason." I said this back, last week on the Thursday show, and I echoed it. I said it again on Twitter. After one, the pass defense is not going to be fixed after one preseason. It just wasn't going to get fixed. It did, I guess, clamp down a little bit in the second half, which is good to see. But early on, like that big, screen pass to Bijan early in the game that sort of set the tone early for the Falcons. Look, I'll give Falcons some credit here. Even in a loss, I was kind of impressed with what I saw from Penix. Kind of what I talked about, on the Thursday show, having not seen a whole lot of him in the NFL, and this being his first full year as a starter. I mean, look, kind of like how you did it at Washington. I'll grant you, that team in Atlanta has been somewhat in Dallas with a losing culture. So, sucks for him to deal with it. But, as a Tampa fan, we can celebrate one of them in the division, a huge leg up. And if the week one was any indication for Tampa, the rest of the division is pretty awful. I mean, besides Atlanta, who's obviously going to be your challenger, Panthers, Saints, I mean, that's mentioning uniforms too. They look very odd. Did not realize that we were actually wearing those this year. But hey, as a Tampa thing, cool. We can all make fun of it, laugh at them, and whatnot. But so huge win for them. They did not play Sunday. They play Monday. We'll preview that game Thursday against the Texans. Different type of team. Obviously, a more veteran quarterback, but a team that I think Tampa matches up actually a bit better than the Falcons. So more on that Thursday. So huge win for them. Very happy with the offense in the second half of Bucs stepping up, even on the day where Mike Evans didn't have a big impact, but he was certainly there. Trust me, he'll have all of his moments as well. But congrats for the rookie Ibuka. And I said it as soon as the touchdown was scored out loud here in my apartment. When they scored, I was like, that's why we drafted you. That's why we drafted you. So huge for, I guess, as a Tampa fan to see that there is certainly a future at the wide receiver position behind, of course, Mike and Chris whenever they end up moving on. And, of course, eventually McMillan will be back fully healthy, hopefully, soon. And, very excited for the future. And I guess another negative, too, is the run game. Touch on this with the offensive line, given the shuffling with, Wirfs being out. It'll come. It'll gradually get there, I think. And it wasn't bad either. It was okay. There was a few, 4 or 5 runs that Bucky Irving looked pretty good in. Also nice to see Rashard White out there a little bit, too. So it looks like he's somewhat ready to go. So, yeah, definitely a lot more positives and negatives, but still some negatives there and things that I would like to see improve, at least with every single performance this year, hopefully. And hopefully it's not a trend going forward. And that's the show. So, again, we're back Thursday normal, but as I will remind you on the next show, next Tuesday, will have to be an evening show, not a during the day show. Just, again, another scheduling issue. But, we will, again, remind you guys that on Thursday. And I think Saturday night we'll try to do another reaction show, I think. So, unlike last week, I think we'll do one this week. Sort of doing that bit of a recap. So, until Thursday, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday and your Wednesday. So, until Thursday, take care, and we'll see you on the next stream.